Welcome to the Out of Darkness podcast, episode 11, Occultic Tennessee, part 4, an In Darkness, Into Light media production. Hey, as I said, welcome to the Out of Darkness show. I'm your host, Brent. This is the show where we discuss all things supernatural, paranormal, and strange phenomena. But we have these conversations by analyzing them from the lens of Scripture and using a biblical worldview. I am joined once again by my good brother and great friend, Cleveland. How are you doing, Cleveland?
I'm doing fine, Brent, my man. How you doing?
Been better, been worse, but that's definitely a different story.
I know, man. It's been a minute, though, but you know how that goes.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
So we're back talking about Occultic Tennessee again.
Oh, boy.
And my understanding is we've gotten a lot of feedback from people enjoying it, but also trying to figure out where all this stuff is coming from.
Yeah. No, and that's the thing I think people is missing on how you guys be figuring these topics out. And like go back to what we was talking about before.
Right.
One thing we pray. That's one thing we do.
Sure.
But in the same time, we just go by the flow because we realize that this is what people need and this is what the answers are from God's perspective. And what we do, we tell the truth. We tell exactly the facts and everything else and let you guys be the ones to see what the God have to say about everything. So pretty much we go from there.
Yeah. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's been a minute since we've been able to get together and do one of these sessions. But if I'm not mistaken, we were starting to come up into the modern times. I want to say, I think we left at like the turn of the century. I want to say.
Yeah, and matter of fact, I want to go to this part that even happened to me when I was growing up. And it's not really just growing up, it's actually when I was about to graduate from high school.
Okay.
And this is really, really, really unique. And a lot of people will definitely know exactly what we're about to talk about because I'm about to break this down. The West Memphis Three.
Oh, geez. Now, this is the moment that I think a lot of you have been waiting for, okay?
Yeah.
Because this is a unique story for a lot of reasons. One, this was, in fact, in Cleveland's lifetime.
Yeah, definitely. Yep.
And here's the other fact. You ready? You ready for this? You guys ready for this?
Yeah.
He knew every single one of them.
Every last one of them, from Damien Eccles to even Brad Presley and them, all of those guys.
Now, that makes this unique because at this point, it's personal.
It really is.
You know, like, it's not just the fact that, like, you know, we're trying to have a vendetta against, like, expressing truth, you know, in amongst these different worldviews. It's the fact that certain things, folks, that have happened in Cleveland's life and my life, for that matter, it becomes personal.
Yeah.
And when it becomes personal, it hits you different.
It hits you in places that you never expected, especially when you know these guys. Not only do you know them, but you also know the victims that was involved.
Right.
And that's really where this really going to take a downtrop that a lot of people need to understand. Well, let's give you a backstory. Well, for one thing, I came back from Japan at this time. I was in Japan from, I say, in 1991 to 1993, pretty much. And well, if you look at how everything went, when I came back, it was after 1990 to 92. And so you got to look at the backdrop of everything else. So came back from Japan, and, you know, I came back as a Boy Scout. I was a life Boy Scout at the time because I got my life badge and everything. Then, of course, at that time as a Boy Scout, I wanted to go further to become an Eagle Scout.
No, if I remember correctly, I think I had mentioned how they were kind of grooming you.
Yeah, they were
in the past recording that we did.
Yeah, they were. They was grooming me to be some kind of, you know, one of these evangelistic kind of guys.
I guess I should probably explain what that means.
You do that.
So in the occultic world, for those of you that don't know or are very curious as to what I mean by grooming, they find, okay. By they, I mean like the leaders.
The leaders, definitely.
This can be within the Boy Scouts. This can be within any real organization. To
exactly.
Be honest. The leaders kind of pick certain people that have unique backstories or unique family history.
Exactly.
And Cleveland just happened to be one of those kids that had a unique history and a unique family.
Right.
And to be honest, I mean, like, that didn't happen to me.
Right.
I jumped full force into it, like, on my own.
Right. Right.
But grooming is something that's actually very, very consistent with throughout the occultic world.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, like, I'm eventually going to do a podcast about this, but my wife and I are watching the series Evil.
Right.
Definitely, okay. Yeah. And basically, one of the things that they talk about, and it should be no surprise to anybody that understands this world, they groom people for, like, the next generation.
They do.
And so that's what I mean, okay, for those of you that are kind of curious as to what I'm talking about when it comes to, like, grooming. They were preparing Cleveland for the next generation of people that were coming in.
Yeah.
And the things that was done,
right,
and the things that they taught you, it's not even good for a normal person, let alone a person with your type of background.
Exactly, because if you think about it, my background is pretty much like my grandmother and them. They was practicing a lot of cultic stuff. I mean, come on. I mean, you talk about things
when
like
you're talking about, like, Memphis, and you're talking about West Memphis, and even, like, the Deep South, I would say.
Right.
There's a lot of blues songs, and I've said this before.
Yeah.
You know, like,
we talk about that.
You know, one of the things that they talk about in blues songs and that culture is that they live like a hellion basically up until Saturday night.
Yeah.
Then Monday morning comes around and they get on their knees and go to church and pray.
Exactly.
You know, so you're flirting with two different cultures here.
Oh, definitely, and that's been like this for so long. Because I mean, you got to look at it in Memphis and West Memphis, especially Memphis. Memphis is very, very like that. They got all the joints. They got all the blue culture, you name it. You got all the two joints there. And especially West Memphis, you know, you talk about B.B. King and all his outbrains and everybody else. This is Memphis, West Memphis talking about here. And when you look at that culture, you are a hellhound person. No, I lose that literally. You guys.
Right.
Yeah, you're a hellhound person from Monday to Saturday. And Saturday, you really get raised a lot of hell on Saturday and Saturday night.
There's a reason why they said the eagle flies on Friday and Saturday we go out to play.
Right,
I mean,
exactly.
There's a reason why they said that.
Right. And that really means that you have all the fun and Saturday night, Friday night, Saturday night, and you got to make sure before midnight, you get all that hell out of you. Then Sunday, you're going to get cleansed. And when you get cleansed, this cleansing is pretty much what it all boils down to. And the cleansing is this. You about to get baptized and cleansed to go to church Sunday. And you got to go to Sunday school. Then after Sunday school, then you got church service. And in a lot of places in the South, you got, especially in culture like my black culture, right? You got Sunday school, then you got the Sunday service, then you got the Sunday afternoon service, then you got Sunday evening service.
Folks, when we talk about going to church all day, it is an all-day experience.
Yeah, because you get all that, you got all that hell, you got to go and you got to repent from,
and
that's not really repentable. I digress.
But I mean, like this is a cultural thing.
It is.
This isn't something that's just like, you know, made up or whatever. Like,
of course.
I think the deeper the south you go, I'm not including, like, say it's like Florida.
Okay? Right.
And for those that live in Florida, you know the joke that I'm going to make. But nevertheless, we're talking about traditional states here. So, like, you know, and I'm not implying that, you know, states like Florida isn't traditional, because there is.
Right.
But, like, you have, you know, I would say Alabama, Mississippi, you know, Tennessee. These are, like, very strict in a certain sense.
Oh yeah, definitely.
The way that they approach church and church life.
Yeah, because that's that culture, and that culture has been going on before you and I was born.
Oh yeah, and I mean, easily. You know, well, one of the things to remember, you know, is I think part of the reason as to why that's so prevalent is because of the African culture.
Definitely.
Because, you know, and I think we've talked about this like off recording a few times. But like the African culture is built around metaphysics.
Exactly. All the way.
And we'll probably get into that a little bit more later, you know, as far as that's concerned. But that's unfortunately what people understand to be Christianity is the metaphysical, not okay.
Right.
What does it actually say? Like, what is the actual doctrine that this is based on?
Yeah, and that's
I mean, I was caught up in that for a couple years.
yeah, and that's one of the things about the grooming part of it, what you just said. And that's where people don't understand. When you are in these different kinds of organizations, I was Boy Scout, 4-H Club, whatever, that has to do with in the South, especially in places like Memphis
Sure.
and West Memphis, stuff like that, you're going to get involved with a lot of stuff like that. Because a lot of times people think that, well, it's no harm, but it's a lot of harm because of the way that they
Right.
groom you.
And I mean, you've only told me just a handful, and that was enough for me to go, yeah, that's not right.
Yeah. And that's the thing that I wanted to bring to the forefront where you see when you're dealing with Memphis and the culture and what happened to these three guys. These guys literally, just to be honest with you, I don't know them directly, like direct, like I know them, like I knew them from high school,
Sure.
from everything else. I knew them when it was in high school, because what happened, and go back to the story, then as a Boy Scout, right? In order for me to get my Eagle Scout badge, I got to do a project, and the project is pretty much is some kind that will have to do with the way that you have to earn your badge. And the thing about being an Eagle Scout, you have to go through some tests and some things to be able to get there. So one of the projects that came across, everybody wanted to build a trail. Everybody wanted to build a project for the homeless. Everybody wanted to do stuff like that. But you know me, I always want to do things outside the box.
Sure.
So what I came to about, and it was never unheard of, but it was some scout troops was struggling. And I went to the Chickasaw Council, of course, to present my project. And when I presented to them, they said they never heard of that. And my project was pretty much I want to restore a Cub Scout and a Boy Scout troop in our area, which is in Marion, Arkansas.
Okay.
And what happened is that this they was between West Memphis and Marion is a little session. And we're going to talk about this in a minute, that these are the people that have these scout troops, everything else, they were struggling.
Okay.
So what we did in order to instate that was that in order for me to get my Eagle Scout badge, you had to become a Scoutmaster.
Okay. Interesting.
And when I didn't know nothing about being a Scoutmaster, I don't know nothing about how to run a troop like that. I know how to run a troop with a Scoutmaster.
Right.
But never run a troop as a Scoutmaster. So, in order for me to do so, I had to understand the parameters and the dynamics of a Scoutmaster.
Okay.
And
Gotcha.
I had to go to my Scoutmaster at the time and ask him how to be a Scoutmaster. And this guy is an old school, when I call it old school, a Navy guy, oh man, seaman. Yeah,
Well, I think my dad would say a crusty sailor. I think is how my dad used to say it.
Yes, exactly. This dude, love him to death. His name, he passed away. Named Jack Harley. Jack Harley was my Scoutmaster, and he literally taught me how to be a Scoutmaster. The way that I never saw it before. And what he did was he told me, Cleveland, this is where you have to run a troop. You got to know the dynamics. You got to be the recruiter. You got to be the person promoted. You got to do all these things. You got to wear 15 different kinds of hats. And I thought it was going to be hard until I realized, well, I think I could handle that. And when I found out what the dynamics were, I was kind of like, let's go ahead and make it happen. So I had to formulate a troop with these guys. I had to come in, and they saw me, and they said, well, why are you here? For one thing, because these are actual Scoutmaster was there. But this Scoutmaster, he was kind of like, he wasn't too much as a Scoutmaster. So he says, "Oh, you want to go ahead and get your Scout, your Eagle Scout badge? Fine, I'm gonna sit this out for a whole year." Okay, cool. So that's what happened. So he did sit out for a whole year, and I actually was trying to run the troop. So what happened was, the recruitment was really crazy because I didn't know nothing about recruiting. So what I did was I asked the assistant scoutmasters, Can you help me? Well, none of them tried. So I had to go get some of the guys in the troop and some dean mothers to help me.
Okay.
So I did ask the questions. Now, when we started doing that, we had to go around different elementary schools.
Gotcha.
And what we did in that time frame, in that area between West Memphis and Mary, Arkansas, it was a trailer park at the time.
Okay, gotcha.
And this trailer park, right, is very, 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 very predominant with young boys who wants to be in Cub Scouts. And I was like, okay, no problem. So we went and talked to the parents, everything. This is where we met these three boys. And the three boys, they didn't know this and everything else, but I was the guy in the background. They didn't even know I was running the troop. So what happened was when I met with the kids, everything else, right? One day was surprised. They see me, and the second thing was really amazing was they said, "How are you gonna get this happen?" Not the kids, but the mothers, parents. So what happened was, trust me, if you bring your sons here, we could go ahead and help them be Cub Scouts and become Boy Scouts.
Sure.
So what Dad was going on at the time was we was trying to get them to see the results. So of course it was a lot of activities we was doing. We was taking them out. We always have them to do around the neighborhood, community involvement, everything else. We did a lot of that. And when they did that, it was like they started getting hang of it. Then of course when we was doing something in our area in Crittenden County and part of the Chickasaw Council, we had this thing called the Jamboree, and we did this Jamboree in West Memphis, and we brought those kids over to be part of that.
Okay.
And when the kids came over, everything else, we helped to show them what it means to be a Boy Scout. We did tie knots, show them how to cook. We show them all the things, how to do certain things, all the things to earn badges, and these guys was loving it. And it was really involved. It was great, going great, everything else. Now, what was going on at the time was after I was doing all this stuff, investing a lot of my time to become this Eagle Scout with these kids, everything else. That's when, now remember this. Now, I want you guys to remember this. I was a junior in high school. Okay.
So you were still basically a kid yourself.
Exactly. I was a junior. Yeah, exactly. I was a junior. You're absolutely right. I was a junior in high school. And at the time, I remember it was a lot of commotion at the time. And I was not aware of what was going on at the time until we see the Crittenden County Sheriff's Department came to the school and bring 3 or 4, 5 guys, because they was kicking out from Marion High School.
Oh, okay.
And these guys were roughnecking at the time, but one of them looked like he was not with us, and that was Damien Eccles.
Okay. So, a couple of questions here.
Okay.
So, did you guys, specifically, did you ever notice like weird behavior from?
Absolutely. Every time. I'm going to tell you what behavior I saw, and that's a good question. One of the things I saw between those 3, Baldwin, Presley, and Elvis.
And these are the guys that actually got charged for the crime, correct?
Exactly. These are the 3. They always hang together, but they always standoffish. And I'm going to tell you what I talk about. I was like that. Everybody called me a loner when I was in high school because I did not. Oh, come on.
I have a howling wolf tattooed on my arm, so I mean, I'm pretty much the same way.
Right. And I always was in that time frame. I always seemed like stand away from people because one of the things at that time, I was like living in 2 different kinds of worlds, and I want to tell people this. What do you mean by 2 different worlds? Think about it. I came from Japan. Okay. And I did not want to come back to America at the time. So
honestly, I can't really blame you.
Yeah, at the time. So I didn't want to come back to America, but I had to. That's one thing that I was really angry about. Then, but I had to complete a mission, was getting an Eagle badge. That's another one. But the third thing was really pretty much I did not want to associate with anybody because at that time frame, I was focused on going to college. I was thinking about get away from West Memphis as much as I can, or Memphis at the
I mean,
time.
I can totally understand where you're coming from with that.
Right.
Because, I mean, I was kind of the same way. I'm from a small town in Northwest Ohio. I mean,
Right.
my dad at one point, I remember this conversation vividly, actually.
Right.
I was planning on going to Chicago, and he basically looked at me one day, and I can't remember exactly how he said it, but he basically said, kid, you're too big for this town.
Yeah.
Don't look back.
Yeah.
Even though that I still have family there, and I still have loved ones there,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to go back,
Right.
to live, that's
Right.
just, it's a hard fact, but nevertheless, I mean, I can relate to that.
Right. And that's what happened to me as well. But with this same thing, back to Damien. Damien had this look that he's looking for something. He got this standing look, Brent, that you like he's up to something. We don't know. And
I think we call that the 1,000-yard stare.
Yeah, it was. And he had this look, and it's like, what's wrong with him? And the other guys look like, how you see you got Satan on one end, you got Satan in the middle, and
sure.
you got the two huge imps legion, and this other one just looking like they ready to do something.
I mean, the reason why I asked is that usually when a person is involved in the occult, especially in the early days, like in their infancy, I would say,
Right, exactly.
into their belief system, there's certain things that are like red flags. As far as behavior, as far as how they associate themselves, even how they talk, or how they don't talk.
Right, they really don't talk that much.
There's clear red flags, and part of the reason why I'm saying that is because, folks, if you see these red flags, like, my best piece of advice is to pray for them.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, like, do engage, yes,
right, exactly,
but be very, very careful as to how you engage.
Exactly, because one of the things about having another guy that was part of my troop at the time, named Mason Granger, and Mason, he was so involved with Megadeth, all that, and
that's not surprising, honestly.
Right, and he was out of touch because his father was trying to get him to be more involved in the Boy Scouts, and Mason was very involved. But see, Mason's problem was that he literally rebelled. Now, I don't know what happened to Mason, anything like that, but I remember for a fact that he was angry. He's an angry kid at the time, and I was like, well, these two guys. When I saw Presley at the lunch counter one time, he literally was looking at the lunch lady like, I want to cut your throat. Like, he looked that way.
That, unfortunately, that is the sad truth about this, because like when I first got into the occults, and I'm just trying to make this personal, really, as far as understanding like what we're talking about. When I first got into it, it's hard to explain, but the best way that I can explain it is like there's a hatred that permeates from the walls.
Yeah.
It's a certain type of hatred that you have, not just for other people, but also for yourself, that is truly dangerous.
Yeah.
I think this is the aspect of sin that a lot of these guys that go down these paths,
right,
in a way, this is how they all respond.
Exactly.
Yes, it's rebellion. Yes, it's sin. But like, there's a hatred that you have to have.
Yeah, and they have it. They have it because you can see it, both of them. But I think it's because Presley and what's his name? They have a hatred, and you can see the hatred about humanity altogether. But see, the problem with those two guys, they got this from Damien, because Damien was really, you could smell it and you could see it in
so
his...
Damien was the main
guy.
The main guy. Okay.
Damien Elkins is the guy that's really was the leader of all of this, because what his whole thing was, he was like, look at everyone and said, how can I destroy them?
Honestly, that sounds right. I mean, I don't want to say it that way, but it's kind of the facts.
Right. And that's where the problem was, is that Damien had that look. And the look was more like, if you mess with me, I'm going to kill you.
Now, here's another question, because I kind of am curious about this myself. The families that we've talked about at this point, how are they involved with this? And I'm pretty sure that this is going to be like brick through the window type stuff here.
Well, yeah, it really is because what happened was, and I'm glad you brought this up. Let's just go into the families a little bit in a different perspective because a lot of people don't understand how is the family involved. Well, when these guys was convicted, because that's just the start right there. When these guys was convicted or got charged for murder, okay, the families in Memphis were more involved than anything else. I'll say that kind of threw me off because
sure, that would throw me off.
Yeah, because what happened with me when I got my Eagle badge, everything else, right, and the real talk, I remember seeing these guys acting like they accomplished something. And when I mean that was, I mean, Brent, they act like they accomplished something. I was at my actual locker, and they was like, lock us down, but they act like we did it, kind of thing. And when you look at them, they're like, what the heck you talk about? You know, you can see it in their eyes. We did something.
Now, I'm going to bring this up because I feel like it's necessary at this point. So when we first started diving into this, I had shown you an actual newspaper article.
Right.
And on the top of that newspaper article, it said sacrifice. It did not say murder. It said sacrifice. So
definitely.
Would you say that is consistent?
Yes, it is.
With like how you're describing this?
Yeah, because mainly, let's go back to the murder scene, then we'll talk about these families in a minute. Now, these three boys that was involved, I knew them because these three guys were learning how to become Boy Scouts. And not only that I knew them with their mom and stepfathers and everything else, but I know them because these guys were dedicated to do the work as Boy Scouts, but they was Cub Scouts at the time. And when I saw what happened, because when I heard the news about them getting murdered, well, I didn't even know they was dead at first.
Oh, wow.
I thought there was some kind of heinous crime. When I saw the pictures in the local newspaper called the Eva Times in West Memphis, Arkansas.
And keep in mind, this is the article that I had. Made sure that this is what we're talking about.
Yeah, this is one of the Eva Times in West Memphis, and also the one from Memphis called the Commercial Appeal. That's the one you had. And
gotcha.
Yeah, you got the one for Commercial Appeal, and they had the same thing.
Because the way that you're describing is identical,
right?
No matter which way, one you're looking at.
Right, exactly. And they had the same story. What was really was appealing because it came Capital One murder. When it was like, wait a minute, murder. Who got killed? And then when you saw the pictures of these three boys, my whole life was really in a tailspin because you see that this is personal. It became personal. Because
there's no way that I wouldn't be, if I was in that situation, there's no way that I wouldn't be angry about that.
Oh, I was very angry because what happened was I invested a lot of the time with these boys. And these boys got murdered. Women found out it was murder because they said that it was a kidnapping first, and I'm like, who got kidnapped? They never.
Wait, what?
Me.
Seriously?
Yeah, at first they thought it was a kidnapping, and the mother and the stepfathers and of these kids and everything else, and fathers and stuff was trying to find these kids. And
so they went missing before they even...
Right, exactly. But
wow, that kind of changes everything.
Yeah, because what it was, we thought, okay, who would do something like that? Then next thing you know, a few days later, they found them dismantled, everything. They body parts was brutally dismantled. They was disfigured.
If there's anyone listening that has a hard time hearing this, please fast forward through this because it's going to be tough.
Yeah,
for Cleveland to even walk back through this is
it's
a challenge.
It's very challenging because when you find that moving body parts, blood, everything, all that in this place where they call the No Bridge Field, they tore it down. Everything else, that's where they found them at. And these kids, it was 3 pillars, and these 3 pillars. Well, because it used to be a bridge. It used to be an overpass.
Okay.
Everything else. And they tore it down because they made it to another highway. And these pillars were still there. And these kids was on those pillars. And they have, but see, here's the thing. that really threw the whole thing off when I found more and more about it, that these pillars, they have a bunch of different symbols. And these symbols were satanic symbols.
That's unfortunately pretty consistent
Exactly.
with that whole worldview. So, like, symbology is obviously a part of this world that Christians, I would say, don't generally have a great idea
Exactly.
about some of the symbolism. And when I say that they don't fully understand it, it's because the symbolism goes back into the ancient world,
Right,
in a lot
exactly.
of ways. So, like, you can find, not just in like hieroglyphics or anything like that,
Yeah,
but,
right.
like, you can find the symbolism going back
Oh,
thousands of years.
Exactly.
So, like, if you were to, I'm a bit changing the subject here just for a second, but I'll explain as to why I'm doing this after I say this part. So, if you were to go out to like New Mexico, right, or to Arizona, for instance, so
Right.
there's obviously a Native Americans tribes out there. Well,
Right.
the tribes would paint a specific thing on the walls of caves and on all the walls of like cliffs. And they would call these beings Anunnaki. Now, no, I already know some of you are going to be like, "Oh, he's talking about aliens." Okay, whatever, sure. So that's not the point
Right,
that I'm
right.
trying to
No,
make
no,
here.
no. You talk about the symbols, right?
So there's ancient symbolism that they use to basically tell a story, and the story is basically, it's you really have to pay attention to what the symbolism is. Because generally Christianity doesn't use a lot of symbolism. Now, granted, we do have symbolism. One of the oldest Christian symbols, actually, my wife actually has tattooed on her, which is the Shiro. Now, the Shiro is the first two letters of Jesus Christ in Greek. So that is the oldest Christian symbol that dates back the farthest, I would say.
Right.
Next to that would be like the fish that everybody knows, and then obviously the cross. But there was also an ancient symbol that was used in Christianity for a long, long time, actually, which was the upside down cross.
Yeah.
That's actually not evil
Right.
at all. In fact, historically, it was to basically represent the Apostle Peter.
Yeah.
He didn't want to be crucified in the same manner as Jesus, so he chose to be crucified upside down. He's not the only one,
No.
but that was an ancient Christian symbol up until probably the past 100 years. So yes, Christians have symbolism,
Right.
but it's not like the occultic world, because these symbols are everything. They mean everything to their whole entire ideal.
Right.
So that's what kind of why I did the whole Anunnaki thing.
Right,
If
yeah,
anybody
okay.
that was curious, because there is symbolism that goes back thousands of years, but even the people that have studied this stuff don't fully understand what the symbolism even means.
Right. And that's where when you start to look at what's going on with these symbols, it was a lot of them. And these symbols was not, it was more like they was trying to scratch it off so they will not recognize what was going on.
Gotcha.
But it was very evident that was there. And they was not just using just actual black paint per se. They was actually chiseling it. Because see, the thing about it, a lot of people kept saying in that time, it was used to be a lot of cats. And a lot of cats in the area, right? Used to, homeless cats,
Right.
wandering cats and stuff like that. They used to be around there, but they all of a sudden started being wiped out like this. It was like crazy, and they was getting sacrificed.
I was about to say that sounds pretty consistent with what we're talking about.
Yeah. So obviously, the cats was not enough. So these three boys were murdered because of they sacrifice. Now, let's go a little bit to what happened when it was in West Memphis. So now, these boys, these guys, was in there to act like they accomplished something. Now, I just heard the news. It was bothering me, everything else. Then I was looking at them, and I want to really go hear more what they had to say. But all of a sudden, they just started walking off because they was wearing lots of black boots. It's hot, if you think about it.
Right.
and you'll think, okay, trench coat, black boots, all that. You
I mean,
name
we
it.
can talk about the trench coat mafia all
Yeah,
day
yeah.
from back in the day. I mean, like even in my school, you know, I graduated in 2006, which
Right.
seems like an eternity now. But,
Right. Yeah.
but even when I was in school, they were worried about, you know, what happened in Columbine
Yep,
and all these
definitely.
different things, you know, with, you know, the notorious combat boots and trench coats.
Right. But you see, these guys was wearing that, but they was wearing a gothic stuff because you see their memories and stuff. But I noticed a couple of them, they all had tattoos. One tattoo I noticed was, of course, Crawley.
Why does that not surprise me?
How I know it's Crawley because I think about the Dangerous album. And if you look at
Right.
yeah, and you saw Crawley.
You know, that was something that you actually explained to me. I never paid attention to that album cover
Right.
until you had said something.
Yeah. And one of the things I saw Crawley, I said, and one you can see Damon because he had his jacket on, but he took it off for a minute and put it back on. Then of course Jason had he didn't have a jacket on because he had Jason's not really wrapped up too tight in a way, but also McKelly, which is the other guy. I forgot. I knew his name, but they call him another name here, but it's McKelly. He had his tattoo is right on his arm on this side here.
Okay. So inner forearm.
Inner forearm, everything else. You could see it. It was staying there. But they was walking out, but they walked out of school. See, one of the things about what they did was they left school, meaning that they both, all of them, and this is the thing that McKellar was the youngest of all of them. He's supposed to be in the 9th grade, but at that time frame, he was he's supposed to be in the 10th grade, but he had to go back a grade because he was, because he didn't really finish up all the stuff he needed to do in the 9th grade because he'd been in and out of school. So these guys left school. Directly walk out of school like nothing and got in.
I don't even know if that's even possible today.
Oh no, of course not. But they just.
Because I mean, like the way that security is now versus like even when I was in school.
Yeah,
it's night and day difference.
Exactly, because I know when I was in school, and a lot of people would say, "Whoa, y'all did? We had an open campus," and when people said, "What's that?" I said, "Well, open campus, pretty much the school is that you can leave to choose at your lunchtime." So we left and go get something for lunch from one of the neighborhood places in West Memphis and come back before time for lunch to be over.
Right.
And but see, they don't do that no more. They got rid of that real quick because I think after that incident happened, that's when they when I graduated from high school in '94, they literally fast forward that and said no more. And I think they stopped there in '96. That's when me and my wife got married around 96. That's how old we are. Anyway, so when that was going on, we had open campus. These guys walked out of campus and never came back. And
it's not suspicious enough for me. Okay, the way that you described how they were acting,
right?
Then you have the clothes that they were wearing, which. If y'all know anything about the 90s and early 2000s, we were all grunge, all goth, all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that was just the culture at the time. I mean, I don't think it's really that much different now.
Oh, no. It's probably still kind of similarities.
But I mean, like, one of the things that's really consistent with what I've been hearing, okay, is there's always some type of tattoo involved. Yeah. Or a good majority of the time. I mean, like, if somebody were to ask me if I have a tattoo from that era, the answer is yes.
Yeah.
It's the unfortunate truth.
Right.
But the other thing that I keep hearing you say is the music side of things. Because let's not forget that Satan was in charge of the music while he was in heaven.
Yeah.
And I don't think that people still realize to today that music is the biggest influence out of anything that any of us really even understand.
Right. And
that's, I mean, because like, you talk about like Ozzy Osbourne, for example, right?
Yeah.
Ozzy Osbourne literally had a song called Mr. Crowley, and it was literally talking about Aleister Crowley.
Definitely.
You have, Michael Jackson with that album that we were just talking about. You have all of these different influences which can change culture. It can. It absolutely does.
Yeah.
Still going on today. That's why there's a deep how do I say underground?
Yeah, it's right.
With Nashville.
Yes, definitely.
I love to go to Nashville. I do genuinely, but there is a darkness that hovers over that city. That you can genuinely feel.
You can feel it in Nashville. Memphis the same way. Memphis is definitely the same way.
So, what you're describing doesn't really surprise me as a person who kind of like breaks this stuff down. There's a lot of that. Those are all red flags for me. One of the things that I had told my wife Lydia at one point, I said, "Did you ever hear me pray in public?" And she goes, "No." I said, "Did I ever mention the name Jesus Christ?" She goes, "Not unless you were cursing." And I said, "Okay, well, there's more, but that's a pretty good indicator of what you're dealing with."
Right.
You know, if you cannot say simple terms like Jesus Christ, okay,
right,
there's something demonically going on here.
Of course.
And so you have symbolism that goes back probably to, I would guess, some form of ritualistic magic. Right. You have an influence of Aleister Crowley that's going on.
Yep, definitely, because I did see, like I said, the inner arm, you see a guy's symbol, but also he got other tattoos and stuff.
And if I'm not mistaken, he has more now, I think, than what he ever did back then, right?
Yeah.
Because now that he's out of prison, he's basically a celebrity now, which is disheartening and sickening, really.
Yeah.
But the guy's basically a celebrity, and that's how he lives.
Yeah, definitely. Because I mean, the guy if we go a little bit further, with him, he's a warlock.
Oh yeah, the difference between like our upbringing and now is that nobody hides it now.
Right, because back then you hide.
I mean, the word occult literally means out of.
Yeah.
You know, out of light. That's literally what it means.
Right.
You know, if it's translated directly.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the other thing, and I know that we're probably getting to it, but like I'm really curious to see how these families are involved.
Yeah, that's another thing that's about to get into.
Because you had told me, you know, when you first started saying the story to me, that one of the like heads of the family were actually looking for these three boys.
Yes.
Like around the same time as the I'm going to call it what it is. The sacrifices took place.
Yeah.
Sorry, but I'm just going to call it what it is.
Yeah, it is. And I'm going to tell you that family member, it was several of them. Matter of fact, it was two families. I thought it was one, but now come to find out it's two. Because what happened was after they was looking for the people who was involved, and they found a bunch of evidence that did point out to Damien McKelly and also Baldwin. It was two families. One of them, of course, was the Winchester family.
Now that shouldn't surprise anybody based off of what we've already done, and that's kind of the reason why why I'm leading into that, because like these families are still in power today.
Absolutely,
you know, they have a lot of pull.
They do,
and they still, for all intents and purposes, control the city.
Yeah, because they control both West Memphis and Memphis. Because here's what people don't understand: how to be a mayor of West Memphis, Arkansas. And a lot of people say they vote.
Well, that's part of it.
Yeah, they vote to make it legitimate.
Yeah, and we don't need to tell anybody, you know, on this podcast that politics are, well, politics.
Right. But also, too, you got to go to Memphis, Tennessee, and you got to meet each of the families of that runs Memphis. And people like, wait a minute, this is in Arkansas. They control all that because E.H. Crump back in the day had a lot of leeway with these families because he became part of the family of Memphis because E.H. Crump was the mob boss. I call him the mob boss, but he was a political boss. He controlled most of Western Tennessee. And also West Memphis, Marion, Crittenden County, we call Proctor, all that area, Crawfordsville in Arkansas. He controlled all that area. And another family that was we call this the what was called the HNIC.
I'm trying to think what
they had in charge. They had.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah. I'm tracking him.
Right. Yeah, that was a prominent family, and they became prominent because the the, the grandfather, which is N.H. Ford,
Okay.
who owns a funeral home in Memphis called the Ford family. And if you think about Harold Ford Jr., Senior, all of them, if you go and just go into, if you really go in and look this up in Wikipedia, you see Harold Ford, then go to Senior, Junior, then you see John Ford and the rest of the Ford family. These are the people who was pretty much the lieutenant of E.H. Crump. Then you got the
Gotcha.
Winchester family. Then this is actually the family that literally came in and do this, and this was the Mahoney, the Macklemores. They was looking for those boys. Remember we was talking about Macklemores?
Yeah, I think it was like more so in passing.
Yeah.
But Winchester definitely, I know we've talked about.
Winchester family was the one that really want those boys the most because those boys did something that relates to the Masons.
Okay, and here we go.
Yes, yes,
So-
the Sky's right. All of them.
I guess we should probably kind of, give a little bit on as to why that keeps coming up.
Right, I'm gonna tell you why. Because think about they had the church, the Sky's Right Church,
Right.
downtown, and then remember before the 1900s, after the post Reconstruction period, everything else was going on in America. When let's say that Tennessee became state again in 1898. All that was going on, Memphis did not want to become part of Tennessee at the time because of what was going on after the Civil War, but they had to.
Okay,
They was
I mean,
part of it.
I get it.
Yeah, yeah.
I get it.
So now this church, this is the Sky's Right Church, the Sky's Right Temple, right, was downtown. They moved it in Midtown Memphis.
Yeah, okay, I remember that conversation.
Right. And when they move in Midtown, they move right there on Union Avenue. If you go look it up, people, it will be on Union Avenue, Memphis, Tennessee. And once you see it, you're like, yeah, you'll be blowing your mind. Well, the Winchester family at the time was the one family that literally has a pool. So what happened at the time in 1993, after the murders, everything else happened, they was looking for these boys. They was looking for these guys. And when they actually made an announcement that they found lead of who was the killer of someone said they snitched. And what it wasn't a snitch. It was more like I think it was the mother or grandmother, I don't know who it was, told the sheriff, the county sheriff's department, saying that I think my grandson's involved, and that was Damien's grandmother.
That had to be so hard.
Yeah,
I couldn't imagine being a parent to my son or grandson committing that heinous of a crime.
And she really believed that he did sacrifice because she kept on emphasizing.
I guess what's so strange to me is the aftermath.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean? Because like he did his time. It's not like he didn't do his time.
Yeah, he did.
Do I think it was a just as far as the time that he spent in prison? No, I don't.
No, because he's supposed to have death row.
Right. So here's a guy who is a part of really a cover up.
Yeah.
If we're really going to call it what it is. But he's almost treated like a celebrity now.
Well, because you got celebrities involved. You got Johnny Depp is one of them. You got all those rockers. I can't think of one of them, but you got Megadeth. You had Marilyn Manson. You had
and keep in mind, like, one of the things that's consistent with this worldview, and you know how many times I've said this, outside of the Christian worldview, okay, regardless if you want to admit it or not,
right,
there is no preservation of life.
That's right.
Christianity truly is the only worldview that the whole entire ideals are the preservation of life. Period.
Thank you. Exactly. That's
so.
Why
and this is clear, okay, when we're trying to break this particular event down. Here we have, these boys that were killed, that were murdered. They were innocent. I mean, we're talking about how old were they? Like 6 or 7 or something like that?
7, 8, and 9.
I mean, we're talking about kids that barely know how to make their own decisions.
Exactly.
And granted, the three that were convicted,
Yeah.
were old enough to, I would say, know right from wrong.
Definitely, they were.
But I don't think they fully understood what they were involved in.
And that's one of the biggest things that the misconception, because I know for a fact when I got my Eagle Scout badge, I remember it very well when the news came out that they found them. And I remember for a fact that when I got my badge, I remember it was like the worst day of my life.
Oh, I would probably feel the same.
Yeah.
I mean, all the work that you put into it almost seemed like it was for nothing.
That's how I felt. Right. And I'm gonna tell you something, Brent, that a lot of people don't understand. When that happened, I went into a full-fledged dark mode, because that's when I realized, when you start thinking about, this is before I even got saved, and I was a saved guy then. But when I got to that point, I was angry with God, because I was like, how dare you for allow these boys to die like that? And I was in that mode. Of course,
I totally understand.
Yeah.
Because there's been a lot of tragedy in my life as well.
Right.
In various different ways, and when you're a Christian, you understand that it's for God's glory and
Exactly.
your good ultimately.
Exactly.
That's not just a standard argument. Like, when you truly believe that,
Yeah.
you can find peace in every situation. I promise you guys that.
Yeah, he's absolutely right. You're right, bro.
Just like what I'm going through personally, which I'm not going to get into right now, but yeah, you are able to find peace in it.
Yes.
There is no peace when the only thing that you're consumed with is death and hatred.
And that's what was going on, and it's really, a lot of people don't understand this part here of what happened to me and a few more other people, but definitely me, was that when I got my badge, everything, I was not only just angry at God, I did not think about life. I was thinking about things. I was thinking about death a lot. I was thinking about what's the purpose of living, and all this stuff was going on.
And you were still a kid. Like, let's be real about it. Like,
Yeah.
you were still a kid at this time.
Yeah, I was still a
It's
kid.
not like you were like a fully grown adult.
No, of course not. Of course not. And you're absolutely right. I was still a kid. I ain't even hit 18 yet. And that's the thing was on earth about the whole thing, was when you saw the fact that you did all this for these boys and you want to really show them the true meaning of life in your own eyes. Well, not with no, we want God involved. You got to have God involved, folks, because one thing about it, I didn't have God. But see, the thing was, when you work hard, it was more about self-glory at the time. At that time,
Sure.
You was thinking, oh, no, it was not self-glory. Yes, it was. For me, it was. Because that was the only thing I was holding on. But for those guys did what they did, and the tragedy behind of the murders that happened, and what they did, all this sacrifice and stuff like that, I became dark. Did not have no purpose of life.
I can understand it.
Right.
Can I justify it from a certain standpoint? Yeah, I can.
Right. Exactly.
But again, like, it all goes back to the understanding of who we are identified with.
Right.
I said that specifically in that manner.
Amen.
So,
Amen.
It's we all have this issue, right, of seeing our identity in what we do or what we're a part of, instead of looking at the big picture and saying that we are supposed to identify ourselves by our Creator.
Exactly. And that's really, my folks never taught me that, or I did not see it in the church I was going to. So that dark road I was on was more on a self-destruction.
Oh, sure.
And a lot of it was because, when you start to see things and you start to see all this craziness, you start to look at life totally not of God's will.
No, and is this because, and I need to be clear about how I'm about to say this, because of the nature of our sin is why it is so dark.
Right, exactly.
It's not, the world is not necessarily a dark place, when you look at it for what it is, right? What makes it dark? It's our sin.
It's our sin, definitely.
It's the fallen nature of our first father, Adam.
Exactly.
It's the whole entire understanding of we're in a broken world and we are broken people.
Right.
You know, you take two broken things and try to mend them together to fix it, it's not going to work.
Exactly. And that's why it's really sad, because go back to what you said about the occult that is out of dark, out of light.
Right.
When you look at, you got your Eagle badge, you got everything in life down. They said you could move up to be a mountaineer. You think it's an honorable thing. Then you start to say, no, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do anything. Then when you start to walk in those terms, you don't want to have nothing to do with life. And people in high school at the time when I was about to graduate, they was looking at me and said, you look dark. You look like something's wrong. And nobody never, it was people who knew me at the time. They would say, you don't look the same person I know. And I didn't think or reason or do as the same person I was. So, because think about these families.
I can relate to that.
Yeah. So, thinking about these families, when I started getting a little bit older, I started finding out about these families, and I started finding out more about what was going on. It led me into a different place that I don't want to be. So, go back to how Damien Elkels, McKelly and Baldwin, these three guys got away with murder. This is what they did. It was a statue, and one of the oldest statues in Arkansas history, from way back before the pre-civil rights time.
Okay.
Not civil rights, but Civil War time.
I got you.
This statue was that of the probable cause of how a person was murdered and the effects of it. And what happened was, if they plead guilty of
that's probably the safest thing for them to do.
Yeah.
You know, they had too much evidence.
Right. But this evidence was mishandled.
Of course they're going to say that.
Right. All this other stuff.
And you know, one of the reasons why I think that was the case, I think it's because of the families that were involved.
Exactly.
Because, like, you have the poll, like we said, like the Winchester, for example.
Right.
They have enough pull to be able to make stuff like that happen.
Yeah. And Calhoun's
and we already know, you know, as of what we've already done in shows prior to this, as to what these families were capable of.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the families, just to do a small recap here, the grandfather was willing to literally sacrifice his grandchild for the sake of an ideal that he didn't even know if he truly believed in.
I know. And that's still,
you know, and it's still going on today. Like that, I honestly feel like part of the reason why Memphis has this bad blood, quote unquote, is because of all of the different influences like that.
Exactly. And you're right, because one of the things that people miss, and you hit the nail on the head, when these families, they said all these misconceptions of people, the evidence, all that. I mean, Damien Eccles could spend 20 years in prison on death row.
Yeah.
He was on there. And the rest of the two was going to spend life in prison. When this statue, they found a loophole because the money, the status, the documentaries, all that led to that. And what they did was, I think it was the families got involved with what it was, the celebrity status was coming in.
Right.
Then when then the families, which is the Calhouns and the Winchesters, really realized, oh, we could use this, and they did.
And that's, I mean, that's how this world works.
Exactly.
You know, like they don't. Okay, I've already said it once, but I'm not going to say it again. But that's how this world works. It's not being in the front lines. It's not being out in the light. It's literally moving in the shadows.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
You know, so if these families want to stay in power,
they have to do that.
They're gonna do it the only way that they know how.
And that's where the people don't understand the disconnect. I had to tell someone this, and this is a guy who used to be my former friend when we was in high school, and he sided with this West Memphis Three.
That's so crazy to me, though. You know, like how such a heinous crime like that takes place, and people can side with the actual murders.
Yeah, because and the thing about him, he's a pastor. And in a Baptist pastor. That irks.
that kind of blows my mind a little bit because like
Yeah.
at that point you're blatantly looking at doctrine and you're rejecting it. You're
Thank you.
literally keeping the veil over your eyes at that point intentionally.
And that's exactly what happened. When I remember when he was on my show, my show about a few years ago, I asked him that question. I said, "Why do you sign up with Satanists?" He said, "What are you talking about?" And he says, "You sign up with them because you blatantly on your Facebook account said, and I quote, I read it to him directly. He don't see anything evidence showing that these guys commit a crime of what happened in that time frame."
That makes absolutely no sense to me.
I know.
I mean, okay, so we've already said the historical aspect now. So like you can't deny the Calhouns and the Winchesters not being involved.
Right.
That's clear.
Right.
How they're involved with this particular sacrifice / murder, that's the mystery.
That is the mystery.
Now, that's the part that like I think you and I want to dive into, but I can only speak for myself. I'm a bit intimidated.
Yeah.
Because you start barking up the wrong tree, you're gonna get the wrong thing.
You're gonna get probably instead of thinking about you probably gonna think you'll get a Great Dane. Next thing you'll get a Rottweiler.
Yeah, and again to like reiterate this, like I don't feel like my life is at threat, and I don't think Cleveland does either. But like we're carefully approaching this.
Yeah, because I mean, what I did, and this is really where I started doing some research about it. After when these guys pretty much plead guilty, they just set them free. I remember the day when they set them free. When I heard about it, and I heard people that I know, especially the guy who's supposed to be a pastor, said what he said, two huge things came in my mind. And this is when I really I got saved at the time. And I was like, just my mind went to another tangent. And when I heard about it, I was like, wow.
Yeah, I mean, what can you say?
Right.
Like when you start diving into the history of, like in our case, it's Tennessee history, and it's
right.
It's the culture of the state.
Exactly.
But what can you really say?
You really can't say nothing.
Because I mean, like, it's clear that these families are involved in the occultic practices, especially when we're talking about the Freemasons. Now, maybe one day, like, Cleveland and I will actually focus on like the actual conversation of the Freemasons. It's very challenging because every temple has their own doctrine.
Yeah, it's almost
it's almost impossible to find what they actually believe.
Yeah, it's almost
but
impossible.
I think we'll approach that eventually.
Yeah, we have to
because like that's a clear part of Tennessee history here.
It is, and I'm gonna tell you something. That's what got me on that road.
Oh, I'm sure it did.
When I realized, okay, I know this, and this is where I told people ask me a question. So, what do you think about all that? Because this is people who know me, knew what was going on.
It's so funny when people do that to me. I'm like, well, do you want me to be completely truthful, or do you just want me to tell you what you want to hear?
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I said, I don't think you want to know my various opinions about this. But to be honest, this is what I mentioned to someone, and they said, they shut up. I said, I know who's involved. And I exactly what I said. I know exactly who's involved. And I even told this to the guy then who used to be my friend. I told him exactly saying, I said, I know exactly who's involved. And I know that they pull a lot of weight to make sure these guys got away with it.
And what's I would be curious to a degree to know just how much these families are still involved in their lives.
I know.
Specifically like the main guy that we're talking about.
Yeah, Damon Elkels, and this is fine. The person that really was supported is his wife. This woman,
which she's got a crazy story too, from my understanding.
Oh, geez, this woman, she was a pretty predominant. See, I think she was a lawyer, she was a lawyer. I believe she was. I could be wrong. But let me see here. I could pull it up, but I know for a fact. Damon Eccles. No, yeah, his wife at the time, right? She literally was was really, 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 really was involved in him and everything else because I'm gonna read a couple of things here. Everything else so you guys could get understanding what's going on here. No, when he got out of jail, everything is called the alpha plea. Now, the alpha plea, and I'm going to read directly what it is. In the United States, the alpha plea is also called the Kennedy plea, right, in West Virginia, and it's called the alpha guilty plea, which is a guilty plea of criminal court whereby a defendant in a criminal case does not admit to a crime or asserts of innocence, but accepts imposition of a sentence. That's why he got out. That's a word salad. It's a lot of word salad.
Well, I was about to say that's glabdygloop in my opinion.
Yeah,
because it's not really clear as to what the point is there.
Right, and that's why when you look at the whole thing, everybody don't understand. So how did he got involved and how he got out of all of this here?
See, that's the part that I don't think anybody really knows is just how this interaction between the families and Eccles actually happened. Mm-hmm. Because there had to be some type of influence,
right?
There had to be. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it,
right?
At least in my eyes, anyway.
Right.
And so we have these historical families that have been involved in the occults pretty much since the conception of the state.
Yes, definitely. The Calhouns, the Winchesters. You got Andrew Jackson. You got and
of course we're not trying to beat a drum here, but
it's about.
There's a reason as to why we keep mentioning them.
Yeah, these are the people who literally have a lot of pull, and these families pull like that. Then they add families. That's another kicker, bro.
Right.
They add a lot of families. Go back to the Macklemores, the Ford family. You got the E.H. Crumps, and you have the I think the Pearsons. I could go down the list of families.
It almost seems like there's a masterpiece conspiracy in a certain sense. Because I don't know, it just doesn't make sense. Something just doesn't add up in my head. How all of this took place the way that it did.
Right.
Clearly they chose these three boys for whatever reason.
Right.
And one other thing, about how all this stuff works. Most of the higher ups within the occultic world, they don't do the dirty work.
No, they don't.
They go to the people that are below them,
right?
In a lot of ways to play out the dirty work. Now, there's only one unique case that I would say that goes against that, which is Aleister Crowley.
Right.
That's a whole different topic in itself. He took it upon his own understanding. I'll just leave it at that for now.
Right.
But most of the time, when you're talking about a conspiracy, that's involved with the occult and murder and sacrifice, they're going to choose somebody that's not going to ask a lot of questions, one, and they're going to think that they're getting something out of it.
Well, that's what happened to Damon Eccles, because I'm going to read here was that, Damon Eccles did have one child, and it's from Damian Safford, father Terry, from his ex-girlfriend, Dominique Terry, and they have a son was born September 12, 1993. And it was really shocking because he was away for trial at that time.
I was about to say that. Yeah, that number doesn't sound right.
Right, he was away for trial at the time when he was born. But see, here's the thing: in 1996, Eccles met his future wife named Lori Davis, who was a landscape architecture, and who learned about the case after seeing Paradise Lost.
Oh,
think about it.
I mean,
Paradise Lost. We talk about this today.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what happened. And see, here's the thing: in New York and wrote him a letter.
So let me get this straight. His wife was a super fan. That's the sole purpose, basically, as to why she ended up getting together with him. I mean, I'm just going to say how I see it.
I know, yeah, it is. They begin their romantic relationship, and in 1997, Davis quit her job, moved to Little Rock, Arkansas,
Of course.
and began working on the Elkos case. And of course, December 1999, CJ returned. He was about 2 months old when this happened. They got married in a Buddhist ceremony held in the prison visiting room.
What does that not surprise me?
Yeah.
You know, like, there's a lot of musicians that I like, and I like their music, but I don't like how they've handled themselves.
I know.
I don't know if that makes sense or not, how I said it.
Right.
So, like, and not to bash anybody, you know, specifically, but, like, there's certain celebrities that you're like, oh, man, yeah, he's talented, he's great, you know, he really he's a visionary. And then you look at, you know, into his personal life, and you see that they get married in an occultic, you know, wedding down to the Amazon or something like that, and it's like, well, why?
Yeah, and you will laugh. This will throw everyone off, but this had to happen, and this happened. Life after release, because remember it was 2010. He was released and everything else. And if you really look at the timeline, I got saved in about 2012 or 13. Well, I'm gonna tell you what really happened. This is after the release from prison. Elkos and his wife moved to New York City and lived in Pearson Jackson. Pearson Jackson is the guy that absolutely one who made the documentary about Elkos. Here's where he is. He lived in the apartment. Next, moved to Salem, Massachusetts.
Oh, gee, no big surprise there.
Yeah, I know. And finally settled in Harlem, New York. Now, Harlem, New York, y'all. Now, I want you to think about this. And a lot of people don't understand about Harlem, but I know I got family who used to live in Harlem and probably still there to this day. Harlem is another occulted place.
Oh, it absolutely is. I mean, it's so we've often on this podcast talked about hotspots, you know, as far as like where this stuff takes place at.
Exactly.
Harlem is definitely one of
them.
You know, like, so I think it's the cultural influence there.
It is.
Mainly because, like,
you got Haitians and all that.
Right, and that's what I was about to go with, you know, like, so, like, you have Haitians, you have even, you know, Eastern African influence, or Western Africa, rather. You know, you have all these different dynamics, and, like, one of the biggest cults there, or two of the biggest cults, is Santa Marta and Santa Maria.
Yep, definitely.
You know, so, like, that shouldn't surprise anybody that they're there.
Right.
But I will say, if any of you decide to go to some of these places, be very careful as to how you approach.
I told him, because a lot of people don't understand, because it's really funny you say that. When he wrote a book, because this is running in 2012, Elkos published a book called Life After Death, which became the New York Times bestseller.
So I once was talking to, because Lydia has wanted me to write several books, because I just, you know, some of my points of view of life are interesting, and quite a few people actually think that it'd be beneficial to read it, right? And I told her, I was like, do you actually know how people become a New York bestseller? And she's like, I don't know. I guess I've never looked into it. Turns out all you have to do is pay them.
That's right.
All you have to do is give them a fat check, and they'll make you a New York Times bestseller.
Yep.
Does that mean that you're a good writer? No.
Oh.
All you do is pay somebody to keep quiet, and that's honestly generally how it works.
Yeah, and that's really funny you say that, because also in 2012, West of Memphis, a documentary. That's exactly this documentary supposed to have several people involved. The only person you could not find involved in this documentary is actually two people, and I'm one of them.
Wow, they actually asked you to be in it? I mean, I understand why you didn't.
Yeah.
You know, does it surprise me? No, because ultimately, what's the reasoning? Money.
Yeah, because they said that because the documentary was filmed, directed, and co-written by Amy Brad. That's the one who contacted me, Amy. And when she did, she tried to contact me in several locations: Milton, Tennessee, Memphis. We stayed in West Memphis for about a few years. Moved back to Memphis. Then we ended up going to Kansas City.
So she literally followed you pretty much.
Yeah, she followed me all the way through. And when she found, because when your change of address, that's
Sure.
how you do it. And I got this letter, and when I saw it where it was from, and I know what it was, I tore it up because you know why? I didn't even want nothing involved with that. Now think about it. My life was chaotic, and I was getting saved.
Right. No, I completely understand where you're coming from.
Right. And when all that was going on, when I got that letter, I didn't tell Tawana this. I said I didn't tell my wife about it at all because I knew going back down to that road, it would be treacherous.
Not only would it be treacherous, I mean, like, you had a family to worry about.
Yeah,
I
did my son.
This path, I promise you guys, like, this is not a fun path to go down. Like,
No.
It just so happens that Cleveland's involved in like a really, really famous story.
Yeah.
And not that he's like glorifying it or anything. It's just like how his life kind of came out.
Yeah, it did. And that's where when you start seeing things, you say, oh, Lord. In my head, that's what I was saying. Then when I was asking, I pray about it, of course. Then me and Tawana talk about, we talk a little bit about what was going on in my life. Then when I got saved, everything else, that's when I really didn't say too much anything. We was in a bad place in our lives at that time. But when I saw that, everything else, when I got right with Father God, and Jesus, my Lord, everything was just going in my life. All this stuff was coming out in my life that needs to come out. When I saw that letter, Brent, I did not want nothing involved.
I honestly can't blame you one bit. I mean, it's hard too, because like the type of the type that I practiced was extremely aggressive. Mm-hmm. Probably some of the oldest type of occultic activity as far as like the practices that you can get. So anybody that is kind of trying to understand what I'm saying is, I practice one of the oldest forms of witchcraft known as shamanism.
Right.
It is extremely dangerous.
Right.
In a lot of ways. Like, I wasn't one of those guys that you see on TV that went up to the Capitol and, was dressed like an idiot. Mm-hmm. I was very, it was very deep, and it ran very, very deep into my soul at the time.
Wow.
And, there's things that happened in that time frame that, like, I look back on it and say, well, all glory to God, but like,
yeah,
I say this often, once that you have scars like that,
yeah,
they heal up,
right,
but they're still scars.
They're still scars. Yeah.
Like it's not as if you can go back and change things.
Right.
But I believe that's why God blesses us with these things.
Exactly. And that's what I love about the show, that this podcast you're doing. People need to get out, know what it is, hope after you get out of darkness.
Absolutely. 100%.
And that's why this is a really prevalent show to have, because I'm going to tell you something, guys. If you struggle with all of this, that's where we will tell you that it is a true God.
Oh, yeah.
That really that really do not only just love you, but also has his son who died for your sins. And that's where you grab hold to that, because that's the whole message is about our Father, of who he is. And that's where people will say, well, you guys talk a great deal of what happened, because go back to the fact that practicing magic, I want to tell you what he did, and you'll love this. Now, Elkels has a number of art expositions showing pieces of art that he created in prison. He has also have a number of events devoted to ceremonial magic.
It doesn't surprise me. It doesn't, and I wish it did.
Yeah,
but we're talking about an influence, right? So like this is the epidemic,
right,
that we're dealing with. Okay?
We are. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because like what used to be Memphis is now somewhere else, which we're getting there. I promise, we're getting there.
Right.
What if I said to you listeners that Shelbyville is now the new Memphis?
Yeah.
You know, Shelbyville has literally turned into Memphis when it comes to open practicing magic, open witch covenants. I mean, like, there's a bunch of stuff, and like, we're blessed to actually have a church there. You know, that
Yes.
Cleveland and I can go to and try to encourage and
Amen.
try to help.
Yes.
But simultaneously, that church has its back up against a wall to a degree.
Yeah,
Because they don't know how to engage. They don't, and it's understandable. Like, you know, this world is not an easy world to navigate through.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up because a little bit of backstory about Shelbyville people. Shelbyville was named from, and I didn't know this until I dug a little bit deeper. Shelbyville was named after Shelby County, Tennessee. Where's Shelby County at?
Let me guess, Memphis. So, you know, you see like how, I hope you guys are starting to see like all these connections that we're making. You know, like,
Yeah.
we're not making them up. Like, it's part of history.
History, yeah, definitely.
You know, like even the next podcast that I intend on doing, which I told Cleveland about, which is about vampires and werewolves. Unfortunately, there's another Twilight coming out, and that's the reason why I'm addressing the issue.
Yeah, you're right.
Because, like, you know, you have to understand the historical value, but you also have to understand as to why the truth is the truth. Okay, one of the things, and I said that I would go back to this, and I promised that I would. What you're experiencing, okay, when it comes to the occult, is what's known as a metaphysical experience.
Exactly.
So let me explain metaphysics in the most simplest way that I can, because it can be very, very complicated to navigate through. Metaphysics is like the emotional response to a degree. So there's two different types.
Right.
In metaphysics, in presuppositional metaphysics specifically, we can basically make a statement. Okay, that statement would be like, the ground's wet, therefore it's raining. It's raining because therefore the ground's wet.
Right.
Is that true? Absolutely.
Absolutely. Right.
But why is it raining? That's the other aspect of metaphysics. Okay, so generally what people are experiencing when it comes to being drawn to the occult is they want the here and the now. They're not concerned with the future. They're not concerned with the afterlife. They're concerned with, what can I get right now in this situation to make my life even at one iota better. They don't care about what the future is going to hold,
Right.
generally.
Right.
And so they make a deal. They
Right.
make a pact.
Right.
And it may look like the devil. It may look like, you know, a little girl coming up to you. I've unfortunately experienced both in my background. I had a demon actually expose itself. It manifested itself as a little girl and tried to influence me through the image of a little girl. And was easily manipulated. And then I had another one that truly revealed what it was.
Wow.
And you talk about being absolutely terrified. I mean, like, I still have a hard time describing it.
I can imagine that, bro.
So, I mean, like, it's the way that all of this stuff works. So you have symbolism, you have sacrifice. And so let me explain that aspect of the metaphysics, right? So the occults are going to say that you need to, it's blood for blood. It's like a gang, right? So like, you know, one thing that Cleveland knows about me is I love talking about motorcycle culture. I love talking about motorcycle culture.
Right, exactly.
But there's a side of it, right, which I'm not going to get into. You know, you guys can do your own research on that, but the whole 1%er idea, the MC idea.
Right.
Most of those clubs that operate in the shadows, and I'm not going to name them out by name because I really don't want that type of baggage.
No, yeah, exactly.
The ones that operate in the underworld, we'll say, that's blood in, blood out. The only way to get out is either you end up in a body bag, or you kill a person to let you get out.
Yeah.
Gangs, same thing. It's blood in, blood out.
Yep.
So in a certain sense, like, that's what this is. It's a glorified gang. And that's demonically what happens. They say, okay, well, I'll do this for you, but you got to do something for me.
Exactly.
I was trying to be manipulated personally I had one of the demons say, well, kill your family. And I was like, I'm not killing my mom. I'm not killing my dad. Like, no. And I said, okay. So it left for a while. And I had a little bit of peace for that time. And then all of a sudden it came back. And when it came back, scripturally, this makes sense. It came back with 7 more.
Yeah, that's scripture.
So, I mean, it literally it started with 1, and then all of a sudden now I have 15, you know, that are talking to me on a regular basis. And then it convinces me. One of them, so they all had different personalities, all had different names, which that shouldn't be a surprise. There was one specifically that I didn't even know that I was doing it. So like I did automatic writing. That happened several times. One time I actually emailed my wife while she was at work, and literally it said from Jonathan, but it was my
handwriting.
It was my handwriting, okay, in an email. I don't ever recollect doing it, but it was my email. And so she came home and was like, "Who's Jonathan?" I said, "What are you talking about?" Automatic writing completely, 100%. And apparently it was a very nasty email that she could have gotten actually fired for. Like, I don't remember ever doing this. So the reason why I'm saying all of this is because I'm trying to make it real, okay? Right. There's an aspect to the metaphysics. There's an aspect to this whole underworld that we're talking about when it comes to the occults that seems really appealing at first. It's like, oh, yeah, I want to get rich, okay? Well, here, sign this contract, as the old story goes. Or you sign the contract and you think, oh, everything's fine. Right. Trust me, you're gonna pay your dues.
Yeah, and that's the one thing I like what you said too. And one of the things I wanted to bring up with him when he wrote these books, go back to what you just said here. In 2018, he published a book called High Magic. I got to a spiritual practice that saved my life on death row. That's he said, a book that describes his spiritual experience in prison. And it was followed by Angels and Archangels, the Magician Guide, published in 2020. And if you read,
oh my gosh, I wish you could make this up, Cleveland.
I know, I wish I did too. In 2022, now Damon and his wife Lori Davis published their second co-author book together called Ritual.
He's literally trying to follow in Crowley's footsteps here.
Yeah, because it's the top of the essential grimoire, which is a compendium of rituals, prayers, and meditations.
Again, all metaphysic. And again, like I'm just saying that to be clear, like it's not based in doctrine 90% of the time. And the doctrine that they do have, okay, Scripture has a definition for it.
I know.
And the definition literally is, okay, so it's split into two different categories. You have true doctrine, okay, which doctrine is what all aspects of Christian life, or really any life, if you want me to be honest, is based off of. But then you have, Scripture uses two different names.
Right.
It either uses the doctrine of men, or the one that I use the most often, a doctrine of demons. Because ultimately, when men try to act on their own accord, it's demonic.
It's demonic. All of it is.
So, I know this has been a bit of a rough episode, and kind of seems a little bit scrambled.
Yeah, but I think a lot of people were like, wow.
So I think the biggest reason as to why we wanted to come into the more modern time is because we obviously know that there's something going on here. And I would not be surprised one bit if we look into seeing who's involved in the Shelbyville aspect of it.
That's what we're going to.
And again, like, all we're doing, guys, is just trying to tell you the truth. And one of the nice things about having the dynamic between Cleveland and I is he can bring the history aspect, and he can make that very clear, and he can make it personal. And I can express more of an understanding through the philosophy aspect,
right?
Because again, like that's really what this is. It's a philosophy. Now, you'll never hear me say that a person's completely wrong,
right?
Unless they're completely wrong.
Wrong, and we have evidence with that because we could go down this list. And if you notice, there's one thing about this whole show that we are doing, and I love what Brent brings to the table that people really. They start asking questions and say, man, y'all guys going so deep into it because historically we could go and research and find out what's happened.
Yeah, and history, unfortunately, people think that history doesn't repeat itself. It does.
All the time.
But the way that it does it is not the
same. It's not the same, right.
So this is, I mean, you all know I've quoted this several times. There's nothing new under the sun.
Right.
There absolutely isn't. There is no such thing as secret knowledge. Okay,
Yeah,
that doesn't exist.
no, it don't, and that's a lie.
And I can, in future episodes, we intend on diving into some Crowley stuff, and I'm just trying to work through that because it's like I'm entering into the head of a madman, literally.
Yeah.
When I read his text, like I've only read to Cleveland maybe a paragraph of one of his writings, and he goes, "What?"
Yeah. And I literally
He was scratching his head for about 15 minutes after.
Yeah, I was. Matter of fact, my head was scrambling for a little bit because now I have to a little bit dive into Allison Crowley. And when we started to look at it, I'm like, oh man, this guy brain is all over the place.
He was a madman.
He was.
And most of these guys that are in this territory, like in this occultic world, they're madmen.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, it's not a coincidence, right, that you hear serial killers being a part of the occultic world.
Yeah, just
like
Charles Manson down.
Charles Manson, Ted Bundy.
Ted Bundy, right.
I mean, like, and then you have, I forget his name, but they called him, what was it?
You talking about
Nightcrawler?
The Nightcrawler, yeah, definitely. I was about to say, yeah, him. Yeah, all of these guys are part of the cult.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. Now, are we saying that you shouldn't still pray for them? No.
Exactly. You have to pray.
You need to pray, and, you know, I could be wrong. I could be very wrong, but I don't know if you're going to see these guys in heaven or not. Some of them said that they had a confession of faith on their deathbed. I'm not saying it's impossible, but look at the way that they presented their own lives.
Yeah, especially like Charles Bunyan. I mean, like you got Ted Bunyan, you got Charles Manson, and you got people like even Damien Eccles. Now, Damien Eccles is not dead yet. However, it's still hope for him to get saved because one thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's one thing I want to really clear this up with a lot of people. When we did this, when we went and deep dive into the West Memphis Three, these guys, souls on the line here.
Yeah. Oh, amen. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that people need to understand. Their souls on the line because these guys need Christ. Now
they do. And in their eyes, okay, they don't believe in the preservation of life, so it shouldn't be surprising that they don't feel like they did anything wrong.
Exactly.
You know, Eccles literally doesn't think that he did anything wrong. You know,
Right.
based off of his writings, based on everything
Right.
else, he doesn't think that he did anything wrong.
Yeah, and that's really the it's not only just a misconception to the preservation of life, but it also tells you how his worldview is. And one of the things about this whole show is to really bring that worldview to light.
Mhm.
Because one thing about the worldviews that we are dealing with today is that these worldviews is blatant.
Yeah.
They're all over the place.
The only thing that's different, one is time, and two,
Right.
because of figures like Crowley. Okay, I'm just using him as a example here.
Right.
Okay, he brought it to public attention.
He did. He really did.
and because of men like him and women like him,
Mm-hmm.
because women are just as guilty as men are in this case.
Exactly. That's what got witches.
They now can literally walk down the street and see symbolism. You can literally see all these things, and I'm going to say it now,
Mhm.
and we're about to wrap up the show here, but I'm going to say this now because I've said it to Cleveland, I've said it to other people that I truly love and care about. I will not be surprised if you see full demonic manifestations in the next 20 years walking down the street.
I wouldn't. We already seeing that now with a lot of stuff that we will be probably going to deep dive into.
Because I mean, like this stuff is this stuff is real. This is stuff that both Cleveland and I are very passionate about, as far as telling the truth and
Amen.
explaining. Look, this has to be talked about,
Right.
And it's I'll tell you, to be honest, like there's been other brothers in our church that are like, yeah, I'd love to come on the show. I'm like, yeah, but you have to be comfortable with the uncomfortable, because like some of these conversations are not easy.
I know, and you could tell. And you know, we love our brothers and sisters now.
Sure.
But in the same time, I think you gotta have that kind of skin.
Yeah.
And a lot of them, we love them so much, but you gotta have we are at a different level because me and you, we experience this stuff.
Exactly.
And that's the thing about we experience it. We live through it. We absolutely got pull away from it. God literally saved us.
Oh, amen. Yeah, I mean, not a day goes by that I don't thank God for bringing me out of it.
Same here.
Because it's a real challenge. Like I still have some PTSD issues from it. I still have some misunderstandings, I would say, as far as like communication wise.
Right.
And I don't get it twisted when I say that, because I'm still very grateful. But I have this famous statement that I've made to Lydia for years. Statement is, nothing that's easy in life is ever good.
Right.
Life is not meant to be easy, and if it is easy, it's because God allowed it to be easy. And half of that is because he's letting you give into your own sin.
Yep, because go back to Romans. And if you really read the whole book of Romans, especially chapter 1, it shows that God give everybody that reprobate mind. And if you think about the word reprobate, it means several things. Their sinful nature.
Yeah.
And when God gave them their own reprobate minds, mean they gave up. He did not just give up to them. He allowed that.
Oh, yeah.
For them to stay in that state of mind until they cry out to him. And I think that's where people need to see with this whole show, is that we are telling you that if you cry out to God, God will hear your prayer.
Oh, absolutely. 100%.
And that's where we need to really get it to the minds of people, that when you start crying out to God and really have faith and believe in Jesus Christ, that's when the real salvation begins. And you got people who, and you will be thinking they brothers and sisters of Christ, claiming they not, when they don't really have faith in Christ.
Right. Yeah. There's a bunch of scriptural definitions that we could give, but considering we've already probably went way over.
I know.
But Cleveland, thank you again for coming on the show.
Well, my pleasure.
It's always a pleasure. It's always fun to see what we're gonna talk about. As far as where this road's leading, because guys, I'll be honest, neither one of us know at this point.
No, we don't. We are in.
We're talking about taking trips to Shelbyville and Memphis and a few other trips together, and maybe hopefully, Lord willing, we'll be able to potentially do a podcast on the road, if we get the right equipment to be able to do it.
Right.
But this story is not over yet.
No, it's actually started.
I think it just started now.
It just started because we now are about to get into some huge territories, and Brent knows exactly what I'm talking about. We'll talk about territories. We are about to get into places that I think that even my own son said, don't do it, Dad. Don't do it. Because we know for a fact that Shelbyville is one of the biggest ones that we want to get into.
And again, like, it's all the way across the state. Like, we'll save that for another episode, though. Because that was eye-opening.
Yeah.
I'll just say this real quick. I discovered something on the interwebs.
Yeah.
That was even shocking to me, and that's pretty hard.
Yeah, because, because a lot of people don't know that Shelbyville was actually named from Shelby County. If you know the area in Tennessee, Shelby County is where Memphis is located at, and that whole area in Memphis, that whole area of Shelby County, is connected to all this stuff there. And I'm telling you right now, guys, we just scratched the surface.
Yeah, and by no means are we going to even probably get as deep as what we could potentially go.
Oh, we going to...
But I don't know. We'll see.
We'll see, man. And that's why being with this brother here is an honor. And just go deep dive into all this in a way that people like, y'all really went there. I said, oh, yeah.
I mean, it has to be done. It does. And like when we first had the idea for this podcast, it's like I knew it was a huge undertaking.
I know,
because like I'm talking about, like, I'm making connections to things that I wasn't even intentionally making connections to.
Yeah.
Like the whole hold on to the next episode. Let's put it that way, because the Vampires and Werewolves episode, there's some connections made that I was not even prepared for.
Yeah,
so.
I'm still not. I still wild when he told me. I'm like, yeah, I'm still wild, guys. So wait till he do that episode. trust me, you guys will be wild out like I am to this day, and believe me, that's gonna be a connection to.
I'll say it like this: it'll bring home the abnormally large birds and the hellhounds. It'll bring it all home.
It's gonna bring all that home when he talk about. Oh man,
this was not intentional. It just so happens that I have a vengeance against pop culture sometimes.
Yeah.
And I'll just say this: pop culture is only pop culture,
and that's why it's called pop culture because it's really pop culture.
Well, with that being said, I encourage you all to think about the things that we talked about and analyze it from your own point of view. You decide what you believe and who you believe in. If you have any suggestions of topics that you'd like us to discuss or inquiries about the Out of Darkness podcast, please reach out to us via Facebook or Instagram, or you can email us at indarknessindelight@gmail.com. That's all for now. Thank you for listening, and stay tuned for more content. God bless.